Andrew Jones.
Good evening. School board members, administrators, teachers, parents, grandparents, and most importantly, students. Thank you for granting me the honor to speak on this wonderful evening. And Manuel, thanks so much for introducing me with your kind words. Okay, so that was the normal part of this speech. That's what I'm supposed to say to start it off, and from here on out, it gets weird. Really weird. And that's not just because this is the first time in the last 2 months I put on a pair of pants. It's more because right now I'm standing in front of an empty auditorium on a Wednesday afternoon, standing on stage, giving a speech to a camera while pretending you're out there 10 days from now at a drive-in movie theater. And now, because I actually didn't get to hear what Manuel said, I'm going to assume that he said nice things about me. But if instead Manuel decided to make fun of me, which is highly probable, I'd like to point out that, Manuel, you need to get a haircut. It probably goes without saying that this is the first speech I've ever given 10 days in the future to numerous rows of cars, and it certainly goes without saying that as much as you might have suffered through my English classes for the past 4 years and the speeches I gave, you never imagined that it would all come to an end with me floating high above you on a drive-in movie theater screen like some weird cross between Robin Williams and Dead Poets Society and Godzilla. To make the whole thing even weirder, I'm currently sitting in my car watching all of this happen at the same time you are. Talk about breaking down the fourth wall or something like that? So when I Googled how to give a graduation speech at a drive-in movie theater, not much came up. But you'll say, Mr. Jones, you tell us not to Google things. We need to think for ourselves. But I would like to point out that even if I wanted to plagiarize this speech and get sent to faculty council and deal with that unpleasant dean of students, I don't even think that's possible. So in the meantime, that left me wondering what I should talk about, and also, how are you supposed to handle this? I mean, is it okay for me to ask you to honk if you like my stupid jokes? Seriously, this is really weird. So I guess I have to go back to life before things got weird, which for many of us is kind of hard to remember. But when I thought about your graduation, I thought about one of the last times we discussed this night in actual, live, not Zoom, English class. It was February, and we were reading Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being and talking about kitsch. Kundera goes on for an entire chapter talking about kitsch, which he defines more or less as attaching a false sense of sentimentality to a moment that others have predetermined to have meaning, but that moment might not actually have that much authentic meaning. As part of our discussion of what kind of moments in your lives might be kitsch, I asked if it was possible that your graduation in May might be a little kitschy. After all, thousands of graduations at this time of year happen all over the world, and many of them are so traditional and so streamlined that the ceremonies themselves might not have that much authentic meaning. Kundera would say it's all part of the grand march. And then it's a bit kitschy. When I brought this up in class, I think about half of you wanted to kill me. Mister, there's no way our graduation is going to be kitsch. It's going to be different. It will be better. It will be full of meaning. It will be authentic. It won't be like all those other graduations. So, my bad. This isn't like all those other graduations. Sorry about that. But that line of thinking then brought me to another conversation that I had with you about graduation. And this one was Monday, a year ago this time, after the class of 2019 had graduated the Saturday before. This was a sobering conversation, because instead of reveling in the fact that you were now the kings and queens in high school about to embark on your senior year, you were feeling a little depressed. Hearing the speeches at last year's graduations about how much those seniors had accomplished, how high their grades were, how glorious their IB and SAT scores were, you were feeling a little bit bummed. Mr. Jones, you said, there's no way they're going to talk about us like that next year. We don't have scores like that. We don't have grades like that. Oh, but I answered you immediately, and I said, don't worry about that. On your graduation night next May, no one is going to care one bit about your grades. Hey, I think I got this one right, didn't I? Of course, in no way was I predicting or encouraging a worldwide pandemic to make this happen. But still, I think it's safe to say that no one sitting in a car right now is eager to have me loom up high above you and talk about your grades, which I might add are actually pretty darn good. Instead, I think I should just talk about you. I know that any graduation class thinks about both the memories you have from high school, but then also how are you going to be remembered? And I'm sure you've had many moments since March where you wondered if you would be remembered as the class who finished high school as Mr. Jones taught English from his 6-year-old daughter's bedroom while his 3-year-old son Zoom-bombed the class asking for his butt to be wiped. I mean, that is kind of funny. Please honk if you laughed. But it's not exactly what you want to be remembered for. Luckily, for the class of 2020, there's so much that we'll all remember. There's Maddie and Thomas wowing us on stage in Shrek. There's Katerina's beautiful singing voice. There's Flavio's primal scream at the beginning of each assembly. There's Diogo's game-winning shot. There's Danny's goal celebration that led to more resilience than she ever thought was possible. There's Mac's broken windows. There's an entire catalog of EAB memes that exist to document all of these moments in hilarious fashion. And I bet odds are one of you is sitting in your car right now not listening to this speech at all because you're fully immersed and making another meme right about this very moment. Perhaps at my expense. On the most difficult day of this past year, the day we held the memorial for Maria Felicia Pinnell, Luisa Januario told me that as she looked around, people just looked too sad and she had to do something. So she left school, came back to campus with donuts and handed them out to people, saying she couldn't bear to see them look that sad. Now that's the kind of thing you want to be remembered for. Or I remember on that same day when Joel Flake came up to me in the community space and said, "Coach, you don't look so good. I think you need a hug." That's a hug I'll never forget. And I suppose that's possibly because we all miss hugs so much right now. That's the last thing I thought I'd ever say at a graduation. Again, not kitsch. Since the pandemic started, it's been commonplace to have people say, "This will change everything." Many times that's been accompanied with phrases like, "Maybe we can just do everything online. Maybe we don't actually need to go to work. Maybe we don't actually need to go to school." I don't think, though, that anyone said, "Maybe we should just graduate at the drive-in." No, I think that's a bit much. But in truth, these comments are out there, and when I've heard them, anytime I've heard, "This will change everything," I've become more scared about that than I have the actual pandemic. Because as much as I love and have loved teaching you English and the content and skills that go with it, that's nothing compared to how much I just love being with you. Actually with you, in the classroom, physically, together. I know you feel that too. And what you're thinking about right now likely has little to do with any content you learned in class or any test, no matter how well or poorly you fared on it. And maybe you are thinking about what you learned from me or from some other teacher, but odds are you're thinking even more about what you learned from each other. You learned about friendship, about laughter, about hurt and pain, about love, about loss, and about not saying goodbye the way that you wanted to. This isn't in any high school curriculum, but this is the stuff that absolutely matters. And if the pandemic is going to change everything, I hope that change involves us appreciating these things more than ever. Because I know for a fact, on Zoom, you can still get good grades, but you can't give a good hug. We're here together on your last night on your EAB journey. Some of you in cars, some of you in other countries. And it's interesting to think of how it all started. Your parents sent you to this school with a goal in mind, eager for you to follow a path. Without a doubt, studying at EAB has put you on a path for success in life. But honestly, that's a pretty kitsch thing to say at a graduation. But of course, I'm now supposed to lay out the path forward because you're supposed to commence, look forward, have all the answers. Let's give it a try. Why not? Per kitschy graduation rules, even in the time of coronavirus, I should give you advice on how to move forward in life. So here we go. Number 1, take what you learned from Miss Kale in biology and create a vaccine for the coronavirus. Hey, I like that one. But if you're not so good at biology, like me, then maybe I'll give you number 2. Take what you learned from Mr. Martorelli in econ and help the world from stop falling into a global economic depression. Hey, that sounds good too, maybe even better. But if econ wasn't your thing, how about this? Number 3, take what you learned from Miss Gracinia, Mr. Hoban, and Mr. Kessler and Model UN to get world leaders to actually start working together to solve both the health and economic crises. Yeah, that might be the best one yet. So if your EAB experience helps you make any of these things a reality, man, that would be awesome. But odds are, the best you can do right now is take what you learned from your English teachers about rhetoric and the power of persuasion and encourage people to wear masks and follow social distancing protocols. Sorry, I know that might not be the most glamorous path. But as you graduate and we move forward, that might be the biggest lesson of all. We probably aren't going to move forward glamorously. And truth be told, even without the coronavirus, your future life probably wasn't going to be especially glamorous anyways. It was going to be filled with ups and downs and bumps along the road, probably a lot like the same way these last 4 years of high school were. And when you look back at your time in high school now, sure, some of it probably seems glamorous in respect. Heck, even giving your English teacher a fist pound at the beginning of class seems downright scandalous at this point. But all throughout high school, you faced challenges. And now we're perhaps facing the biggest challenge of all. Aside from the obvious public health and economic impact of the pandemic, one of the most challenging things right now is not knowing exactly what path we're on, not knowing what the next step is, not being able to follow a playbook that sets us up for success. That uncertainty is scary. Everything we knew, everything we thought we could expect, even a normal graduation, has been tossed out the window. I know this looms heavily on your mind, and it's no different from me. But if you really think about what made high school great, odds are the best moments weren't ones when you were following any set path. It was the uncontrolled, impromptu laughter in the community space at lunch. It was the backflip after a three-pointer in basketball. It was the spontaneous fist pound. It was the emotional hug. There's great beauty in those little moments, and those are the things that you're going to remember. Of course, that doesn't change the fact that this wasn't supposed to happen. You were supposed to have a normal senior year, an awesome senior week, and a graduation that your English teacher might have said was a little bit kitschy. There's no way to take the sting of the fact that you missed all these things. Many of you have shared this sentiment with me, but honestly, you haven't shared this sentiment nearly as much as I thought you would. In mid-April, the morning after your normal senior year ended, the night before the governor had declared that schools would be closed until at least May 31st, you were scheduled to have Zoom class with me at 9 the next morning. I wondered if you were going to show up. You did. And when you did, I asked you to write about how you were feeling. I knew it would be good for you to write, but I worried about how dark and negative this might become. But that's not what happened. One after another, the reflections came pouring in. This is bad, but I feel so lucky. I am really fortunate to be with my family. Considering what's going on in the world right now, I'm so grateful for my situation. And everything's a mess right now. I'm so lucky to be with the ones that I love. I previously thought that perhaps we'd need this class, and maybe you'd need me to help put this in perspective and focus on what really matters. But you didn't need that at all, and you didn't need me. You were already there. And the best part was, you were already there together. That's what we're going to need moving forward. Because the truth is there is no clear path and there are no easy solutions. And then, just to heap a little more on your plate, we're counting on you to make all this better. We're counting on you to take the things that you learned at EAB, how to be creative and open-minded, how to be kind and compassionate, how to be tough and persevere, and of course, how to give a good hug. We're counting on you to focus on what really matters, to avoid kitsch and make Kundera happy, to make your lives as genuine and authentic as you can, and then spread this to others too. We're counting on you to do the little things. Be nice to people, be accepting of others, help people come together, even if the best thing we can do to come together right now is on Zoom or at a drive-in movie theater. In Kundera's book, we know the main characters are going to die, but that's not how the book ends. It ends in the most unlikely of manners. The characters, main characters, on a whim, take a trip to an old ramshackle hotel and spend the night dancing in the hotel's basement. It doesn't seem to make any sense as to why they're there, yet they find themselves incredibly content. And as I look out at an empty auditorium and pretend that I see a whole fleet of cars, I feel the same way. Incredibly content that we're all here together. And maybe, just maybe, I can see us dancing. Thank you, and congratulations.